The Business Report brought to you with the compliments of CIBC First Caribbean. Banking that fits your life.
In business tonight, President of the Barbados International Business Association, Julia Hope, is calling for a level playing field for those in the sector. Her comments follow the constant moving of the goalpost by the European Union on jurisdictions like Barbados for the country to become compliant. Now, in December, sweeping changes were made to the island's corporation tax structure, and just last week, several changes were made to the company's amendment bill, which now requires that more information be provided about beneficial owners. Now, members of Parliament have voiced their concerns about the pressure on Barbados and the constant need to go to Parliament to make changes to our legislation. Ms. Hope has described it as frustrating and says that some countries have even decided to give up on their international business sectors. She is, however, pleased with the moves made by the government to address the situation.
We want to know why Barbados has to adhere to certain standards when other jurisdictions do not. And the EU is asking for Barbados, as the Prime Minister would have alluded to in her budget speech, to commit to open-ended commitments, an open checkbook, where other EU member states themselves don't have to comply with some of those requirements. And then we only have to look further afield to the US, and we know that, again, it is not a level playing field. So I think if goalposts were being moved for every single jurisdiction around the world, we couldn't complain. But when we see that it is targeted to certain jurisdictions, one has to ask the question why.
Well, commercial banks in Barbados are obligated to keep the information of all customers private, and the conditions under which such information is to be kept are clearly spelt out in the recently launched Code of Banking Practice. Corporate Secretary General Counsel with Republic Bank, Sasha Shillingford, says there are very detailed procedures and restrictions on how and when information is disclosed.
What are our systems that we have in place? I mean, obviously in the digital age, keeping information safe and stored electronically is a constant challenge, and it's constantly changing. So we do make a commitment to ensure that our systems are of a standard that can deliver on that commitment to ensure that your information is safe.
And Ms. Shillingford says the code also makes it clear that banks must be sure to spell out the terms and conditions for loans before customers sign off on them.
And the obligation, on the other hand, of customers on the other side to ensure that accurate and full disclosure is made of information to allow banks to assess credit before extending loans. It outlines the obligation of banks to clearly and accurately advise customers of all the terms and obligations of loans, including the security that might be required, applicable fees and charges, the conditions of lending, repayment, interest rates. All of that information is relevant upfront. And again, the banks do recognize that the importance of having all of the information before you actually agree to the transaction.
And it's time now to take a look at how those stocks traded on selected exchanges across our region. In Jamaica, Wasinco Group Limited ordinary shares was the volume leader with 603,633 units. In Trinidad and Tobago, National Flour Mills Limited was the volume leader with 180,293 shares changing hands, all for a value of $297,381.84. And here in Barbados, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the volume leader, trading 156,518 shares at $3.25 each. And now in tonight's edition of Minding Your Business, it may not be your typical Saturday treat, but it's quickly catching on. Minding Your Business, with the kind compliments of the Barbados Workers Union Cooperative Credit Union Limited, who remind you that you are better with us.
On this week's edition of Minding Your Business, we're talking sushi. It's becoming increasingly popular in Barbados, and a company called Cook Caribbean, owned by award-winning chef Adrian Cumberbatch, is making it popular. We're not talking about South Saturdays anymore, we're talking about Sushi Saturdays. Multiple award-winning top chef Adrian Cumberbatch has headed fine dining establishments from Bridgetown to Port of Spain and beyond, earning the highest accolades both at industry and ministry levels. And now, about a year after returning home to Barbados from Trinidad and setting up his culinary studio at Warren's in St. Michael, Adrian has started to shake things up with something called Sushi Saturdays. He says it actually came about after he was getting some back and forth with a company over a planned sushi project.
My friends were like, Adrian, why don't you just try to make, let me taste the sushi. And they gave some friends some of my sushi, and they were like, wow, this thing tasting good, why don't you just start it? And you're waiting on this company to start you, why don't you just start this sushi? And I did put some pictures up, and now I'm on my third Saturday in Sushi Saturdays today, and it's rolling. It's really fantastic.
What would you say, I mean, we were talking about this off camera. For Barbados, to me, it seems like you either really like sushi or you don't like it. So what's that experience been like for you in terms of your brand?
So what I'm doing now is I'm bridging that gap with who likes sushi and who don't like sushi, or who in between, who feeling in between the sushi. And it's not raw. I have one raw product on my menu every week, which is the tuna. I use the ahi tuna, a Japanese expensive tuna, and then I add things like mango, I make it spicy, I add side and stuff like that. Make it interesting and bring it back to the Caribbean, you know? So to bridge that gap with sushi, everything else is cooked. Saturdays in Barbados is house. So why not even have sushi?
It's true. Nothing wrong with that.
But sushi is not Adrian's only passion. He's also very concerned about the youth in Barbados and helping them to excel, because one of the key mandates of his company, Cook Caribbean, is also to educate.
I think now it's time to come home and give the youngsters. A lot of adults ask, we do teaching classes for adults. I want to go to the youths. We have an issue in the community with the youths, the young ones, and tourism is our market in Barbados. Tourism is our #1 GDP, you know, so we have to encourage who's coming up behind us to keep involved, and the young men too as well, you know, come off the streets, make some street bread, make some turnovers, do something healthier for yourself that you could make some extra money. Because my first car I bought at 16 years old from my cheesecake and street bread sales.
Now, before this interview, the most I knew about sushi was how to spell it. I mean, I've had a few rolls before, but now Adrian was about to teach me how to make it, specifically a California roll. That's basically a mixture of some special herbs and veggies, crab and avocado, or simply pear as we Bajans call it. It's truly a very interesting and intricate process.
Sushi is a very delicate thing, and it's very intimate, as you would say. So you have to make sure that your hands are properly washed and sanitized. I'm doing this for you here because we're going to eat this. For the mass production, my team will use gloves, right? But it's so intimate, but usually don't use gloves because it gets the taste of the latex in the rice.
And through the magical speed of television, we get this beautiful mixed platter of sushi, along with a bottle of red or white wine ready for collection or delivery. Meanwhile, this top chef also has plans of starting some unique sushi packages for special events like weddings, meetings, parties, or even regular house lines. He also has some special sushi-themed events and partnerships planned as well. So if you'd like to get in contact with top executive chef Adrian Cumberbatch and his Cook Caribbean, just give him a call at 262-1673, and you can also check out his company Cook Caribbean on Instagram and Facebook.
And that's it for this week's edition of Minding Your Business, where I actually learned to make sushi. A special thanks to Adrian Cumberbatch of Cook Caribbean. So now I get to go home and eat my sushi with this lovely bottle of red wine. Do have a good night.
Minding Your Business.